Have you ever really stopped to think about what you're made of? I mean, really made of. Or what about a giant redwood tree? It turns out it all comes down to the exact same fundamental thing, the cell. These tiny, amazing little structures are the blueprints for all life. And today, we're going to unlock the secrets of two of the most important types.
All right, let's just dive right in. What you're looking at here is a plant cell. Now, I know it might look like a complicated little city, right? With walls and power stations and a central command center. And you know what? That's actually a pretty perfect way to think about it. This is where all the magic of life really happens, and we're about to take a grand tour. So before we can really compare the two stars of our show today, the plant cell and the animal cell, we need to get a handle on the family they both belong to. They're part of a very advanced, very organized group. And that group has a fancy name, eukaryotic. A eukaryotic cell is, to put it simply, a highly organized cell. The absolute key feature is that its genetic blueprint, its DNA, is kept safe and sound inside a control center called the nucleus. Plus, it's packed with all these other little structures called organelles that act like tiny organs, each one with a very specific job to do. Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Plant and animal cells are both eukaryotes, which tells us they share a common ancestor way, way back. But over millions of years, boy, have they adapted to lead completely different lives. One is designed for moving around, for being flexible, while the other is built for stillness, for incredible strength, and for harnessing the power of the sun itself. So even though they're so different, they actually run on the same basic operating system. Think about it. They both have a nucleus, which is kind of like the brain of the whole operation. They both have a cell membrane that acts as a gatekeeper, deciding what gets in and out. And, crucially, they both have mitochondria, the powerhouses that turn food into energy. They share a ton of the same essential machinery. And right here, this slide gets right to the heart of it. These aren't just random differences. The three big ones you see here, they are brilliant evolutionary solutions that explain everything from how a lion can run to how an oak tree can stand tall for centuries. So let's zoom in on the plant cell for a second, because these three unique features are basically its superpowers. They are the adaptations that truly allow a plant to be a plant. Superpower number one is its suit of armor, the cell wall. It's made of a really tough material called cellulose, and this rigid outer layer is what gives a plant cell its fixed, kinda boxy shape. It's like an external skeleton for every single cell, and that's what gives a flower the strength to stand up straight and a tree the ability to grow hundreds of feet into the air. Now, look at the size of that thing. The central vacuole. This isn't just some little storage closet. It's a massive water balloon on the inside that can take up most of the cell's space. It pushes out against the cell wall, creating something called turgor pressure. That pressure is what makes plants firm. You know when you forget to water your houseplant and it gets all droopy? That's because these vacuoles are losing water, and that pressure is gone. And now for the third, and you could argue the most important superpower of all, the chloroplast. These little green discs, well, they're the reason we have food to eat and oxygen to breathe. They are tiny solar reactors, and they perform what is probably the most vital chemical reaction on the entire planet. And this is that process, right here, photosynthesis. It's basically magic. The chloroplast uses that green stuff, chlorophyll, to grab energy from sunlight. It then uses that energy to smash together carbon dioxide from the air and water from the ground to make sugar, which is the plant's food. And then, as this incredible bonus for the rest of us, it releases the oxygen we all need to survive. So these little organelles are just amazing, right? Mitochondria powering our every move, chloroplasts feeding the entire planet. But here's where the story gets a little weird. They act like they don't quite belong. They have their own DNA, separate from the cell's main blueprint, and they reproduce all by themselves, which of course raises a pretty fascinating question.
Yeah, where did they really come from? Were they always part of the cellular team, or is there a much deeper, much more ancient story here?
Well, the answer is one of the coolest stories in all of biology. It's called the endosymbiotic theory. The idea is that billions of years ago, a larger, primitive cell swallowed some smaller bacteria. But instead of digesting them, they just stayed. They formed a partnership. The big host cell gave them a safe place to live. And in return, the little bacteria provided a huge amount of energy. Over millions of years, they couldn't live without each other. And the evidence for this is like something out of a detective novel. It's amazing. First, these organelles have their own DNA, and it's circular, just like a bacterium's. They have two membranes around them, their original bacterial membrane on the inside and an outer one from when the host cell wrapped them up. They even copy themselves inside our own cells using a method just like bacteria do. They're basically the ghosts of an ancient, free-living past living inside of us. So we've got this complete, super complex cell full of all these specialized parts and even these ancient partners living inside. The last big question is, how does it make a perfect copy of itself? How does life actually grow? The answer is this beautiful, elegant four-step dance called mitosis. First, in prophase, all the stringy DNA coils up super tight into the X-shaped chromosomes you see here. Then, in metaphase, all of those copied chromosomes line up perfectly right down the middle. In anaphase, the copies are yanked apart to opposite ends of the cell. And finally, in telophase, two brand new nuclei form, creating two identical command centers for two new cells. And this final step, the actual split, reveals one last critical difference between our two cells. An animal cell is flexible, so it can just pinch in the middle and split in two. Simple. But a plant cell, with that rigid wall, it can't do that. No way. Instead, it has to build a brand new wall called a cell plate, straight down the middle, separating itself into two new identical daughter cells. And so from that one simple act of division repeated billions upon billions of times, you get everything. You get a single blade of grass, and you get a sprawling forest. You get one fertilized egg, and you get a complex thinking, feeling human being. It's just incredible to remember that the unbelievably complex world hidden inside each of these tiny cells is what builds the magnificent living world all around us.